we like being around when the soap opera stuff starts, and we like that Miami is always involved in these kinds of transactions. So let's start with some of the things happening in basketball. I mean, you were critical of Russell Westbrook going to the Lakers. Haberstroh says the Lakers have made themselves worse. But now everybody wants the Danny Greens and the shooters. So am I to assume that the Lakers are going to get shooters here somewhere as they talk about Carmelo, as you hear about what the Lakers are going to do next step, because it can't go into next season with AD and LeBron being your best three-point shooters?
I'd like to amend my Russell Westbrook take from draft night. I've had time to think about this and really observe kind of recent history, and I think I'm changing my mind in this regard. If you're Rob Pelinka, you're looking at the Lakers, you say, "Hey, what do we need? We need LeBron and a bunch of shooters." So you say, "What's our immediate need? Shooting, right? If healthy, if LeBron and AD are healthy, we need shooting around them." And I think that's the prism that I and Tom and a lot of other people thought about the Russell Westbrook trade. It's like, wait, you guys took two of your better shooters and traded them for a non-shooter. It seems like you made your most glaring weakness even more glaring. But I started thinking about the Brooklyn Nets and how I was also not so bullish on that and on that deal of Harden going there. I said three guys. How hard is it going to be for Steve Nash to juggle those three players, not only offensively but defensively, given that two of them are not good defensive players. And what I arrived at was why the Nets worked was because they never really had all three guys. It was always two out of three guys or one out of three guys. And in that regard, if you always know that someone's going to be missing, having three guys is incredibly important. That's what allowed the Nets to stay first and second throughout most of the season and not drop. Meanwhile, the Los Angeles Lakers, they lost their two guys and they went from second, third to the play-in tournament by the time those guys came back. So if you're Rob Pelinka and you're thinking, whoa, my most glaring weakness isn't shooting. My most glaring weakness is what happens if one or both of these guys gets hurt. Then going to get Russell Westbrook allows you to carry through those middle innings, those games where LeBron or AD can't play because they're hurt or because they're tired or whatever the reason.
So that changes the paradigm again, does it not? You're not building a super team so that your third guy can be your third best guy. You're building a super team so that your third guy can be the number one guy 30 games a season as you're load managing or injured. That's what that is what the power structure over the last decade is going to birth, is what you're saying. The Nets just realized, let's just give the keys over to these guys. They can have the salary cap. They can run this entire place, because just having the three of them around allows us on any night to have a team that people want to see just because one of them's around.
I mean, if you think about it, either if Kyrie doesn't land on an ankle, which is a freak injury, or if Durant is half an inch back, maybe we're talking about the Nets winning the championship, and that strategy worked perfectly, even as Harden was hurt with the hamstring injury, because Harden carried them when the other two guys weren't playing. I don't know if it's a paradigm shift, Dan, because it's incredibly hard to pull off, right? And there is still an element of, hey, when they're healthy, you still got to figure out how to make them all fit together. And I think Frank Vogel and the Lakers are going to have to figure that out. But it's definitely changed my mind about the idea of collecting talent. Well, you can't play them all. Well, yeah, you can't play them all because injury or load management is going to enter the equation, or mental health rest are going to enter the equation as well.
Is Carmelo going to end up there? Is Carmelo going to end up with the Lakers? Because that would make a lot of sense, would it not? And why did Paul opt out on $44 million? I thought that you guys all said that he would opt in on that.
Well, no, I
No,
think
no.
Amin's been pretty strong from day one, because not only because of Chris Paul's great season, but the fact that he's a president of the union. He can't be seen as doing any sort of favors for an owner like Robert Sarver. He has to set the market for his base.
Yeah, that's absolutely right with regard to Chris Paul. And by the way, opting out gives him the leverage to keep Robert Sarver and the Suns honest, because you mess around with this, I'll take my ass to New York right now, and then let's see, what Jim Dolan, who's never been shy about paying big money to big names before, about. But as far as Carmelo Anthony goes, then the last couple of years I felt like Portland was a great fit for Carmelo. They use him the right way. He gets the appropriate amount of respect that I think he's been looking for, while also it's not overtly kind of just, letting Carmelo be Carmelo like it's 2014 all over again. So I thought Portland was a great fit. But if you're Carmelo Anthony and you're looking at the Lakers, the opportunity to play with LeBron, something that since 2003, I'm sure these guys have dreamt about. And there is a need for your exact skill set, right? They need a shooter. And Carmelo in Portland these 2 years has learned to become a shooter in smaller windows, right? It's not give me the ball, let me hold it, let me touch it, let me jab step 100 times. It's quick decision Carmelo, which is what, kind of needed to happen a little sooner. Now, going to the Lakers, there's an opportunity to do that. Plus, we know, again, these guys aren't all going to play all the time. There are going to be nights where you get to relive your glory days.
Locally, Mike Ryan, I want to talk about what it is that the Miami Heat might do. They do not do restful. They don't do stationary. They were in the finals less than 12 months ago, and now they're turning it over because they're restless. And this summer of free money might turn into Kyle Lowry and DeRozan. And you're mocking it, Amin, because you're saying how much better the rest of the conference has gotten. I would say part of the analysis here that should scare you as a future team builder is Pat Riley, Mickey Arison in their 70s, wanting to play big and for now because they're going to be 80 years old. Like they need to do this in Jimmy Butler's window. They can't wait for 15 years from now. It's about now and right now. They are mortgaging future and young players with the idea of Kyle Lowry and Jimmy Butler late in age. Kyle Lowry, 3 years, $90 million. It's going to take him up to 38. It feels like the Dan Marley days. It feels like what they were doing when they ran old teams out there.
I understand why you're doing it, but you're also omitting the name of Bam Adebayo. I think they view their core as we have to do this during this Bam and Jimmy window. It's been reported that the Miami Heat consider Bam Adebayo untouchable. Is that the right approach? Because they made it to the finals with Bam Adebayo as their second best player here. And I see Billy. Oh no, Billy wants to get in here with some culture stuff.
No, I was going to ask, like, realistically, do you think that they're doing this because of Jimmy Butler's window or because of Pat Riley's window? Honestly.
That's where I thought Dan was going when he said Mickey's 70 and Pat's 70. It was talking about going big. I thought it was more about them wanting to see glory one last time before whatever happens before they can't be involved as they are now.
But is this the right core to do it with? Because if they're going to consider Bam untouchable, they take themselves out of a lot of superstars. Because Bam is absolutely a piece that could net you a superstar like a Damian Lillard because you don't have the picks, but they're not moving on from that. Is that the right decision?
I think it is, because I think what Bam represents is one of the most rare talent combos. This big that can defend multiple positions at an defensive player of the year level, and also is the center of your offense, not because he scores 30, but because he is your primary playmaker. And I think when you combine all of those things in one player, it's very hard to replicate that. And it's an incredible advantage they have going into games. I don't think there's an issue with going after Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan, particularly because these are the guys that are going to be available to you given the resources you have available. Like Mike said, there are no draft picks that I can hand out there. So it's all about the young guys that I've got. They were the Tyler Heroes or Precious Achiuwas, whatever. And to be honest with you, I've been pretty steadfast on all these guys. They're all right. They're not, not my Tyler Hero, not my Precious Achua. And if you got an opportunity to get better, you do it. And as they did when they got Jimmy Butler, sometimes it's just about getting me to the next step, and then I'll figure it out from there. And so if Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan are the best that he can do, I think that's a good summer. I'm just saying, pump your brakes before you assume everything is taken care of. Now we're done. Kick your feet up. Put your hands behind your head. There's still more work to be done.
Should Bam be untouchable?
I think so. I mean,
Even after that, I know it was a 4-game series. It went quickly, but it kind of feels like
the reason I asked the question, and just bear the hypothetical for a moment, no matter how absurd it sounds to you. If we're doing the whole win now thing with Pat Riley and Ellisberg needs to be creative, and we're going to file it under the umbrella of we need to win for Jimmy right now, and the last 12 months, their relationship isn't what it was, even as they're making commercials together because Bam wasn't aggressive enough, and Jimmy doesn't like that as he's getting older. If I tell you that within that window, the Heat decide to trade Bam and decide to do it so that they can mix and match however the salaries work, so 4-team trade, 5-team trade, somebody gets Bam and is happy with it, now you've got Kawhi and Lowry and DeRozan and Jimmy going after the title. Is that I don't even know if it's possible, but I'm asking you, is that crazy to think that the Heat are managing that way in the late stages of Pat Riley's life?
If you're telling me that you trade Bam and in return, somehow through the machinations, you get Kawhi, DeRozan, and Lowry, and you're telling me I'm getting reasonably healthy versions of these people, then I think the Miami Heat would do that. But I just don't think those things are really in play. And the reality is it turns into, Mike, you said, oh, you could get a Damian Lillard. I love Dame. I think he's a great player. I think he's one of the greatest players in the league. But I wonder what happens to the Heat defensively if you trade Bam for Damian Lillard, because I mean he's so integral to everything they do defensively. He covers a lot of mistakes. He's what allows you to play a Tyler Hero and a Duncan Robinson, extended minutes, and Kendrick Nunn and all those guys. They get to play that much because of Bam and his defense making up for stuff.
And even without Kawhi Leonard, you add Kyle Lowry to a defense that has Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo in it, you finally get that point of attack defender that the team was kind of missing, hoping that they could address in previous off seasons and didn't really get around
Is
to
DeRozan still a good defender?
I say he's average. I mean, he's not locking down people, but I don't think he's awful.
But Lowry is.
But Larry knows it and uses his body in the right way, right? The guy is one of the league leaders in charges every year. Just so smart, high IQ out there. Look, they're going to be better. I don't want to throw cold water all over Ryan Cortez's hot summer night here, but they're going to be better if they get those two guys. I'm just saying, don't think that that's the work is done, because that's still a ways away from saying we're going to win the East, let alone a championship.
I mean, since you mentioned Duncan Robinson, I was hearing conversation about free agency, and there was conversation that he's a $20 million, $22 million a year player. Is that someone you'd want to keep with this core, or is that too high of a price to pay?
So I think in the same way that Bam is integral to the defensive side of the ball for the Heat, it makes everything happen. I think on some level, Duncan Robinson, the threat of his shot, is very integral to the Heat offense. So unless you can tell me I can get an elite shooter in his stead, it's going to hurt them if they don't keep him. And as far as a $20 million number, that's not a crazy number when you look at what Joe Harris got, when you look at Davis Bertans got. Like, that's the number for the elite shooters who bend and stretch the defenses that you play against. Now, both of those guys, both Bertans and Harris, had really, really cringy moments in the playoffs, much like Duncan Robinson did. And so it's a good time to recognize, hey, yes, I'm telling you, it costs you $20 million for this type of talent, but also I'm telling you, don't think you're going to show up every night. There are going to be nights where you're going to have to gut one out on your own. And to me, it all comes in conjunction with everything else we're doing. Obviously, if this is just a regular team and you decide to pay Duncan Robinson $20 million, then it's like, Jesus, man, I could be spending that on this or that or that. But if you're the Miami Heat and you said, I went out and got these extra players, and I got this defensive player of the year guy over here, and I got this all-time leader over here, then you kind of need that shooter to space the floor, and Duncan Robinson's kind of integral in that way.
We got to talk about something else. There have to be other things to talk about, because we're wearing people out with nonstop, incessant Heat chatter. We're going to do a
already, and it's not even 6 o'clock yet.
6 o'clock tonight. We will pop up on YouTube and do yet more of